Hello, and welcome back to Under the Sun podcast. Today we have, I think it's like the most exciting topic on the planet. My husband, when we're out in public, doesn't like me to talk about it, but I definitely do, depending on the person. And I now have my certain people I can talk about it with, and that is parasites. Talking about parasites, everybody. And we have the expert here. She, in case like you didn't...
You were so kind, because I was like, oh, I'm the expert.
You are. So like, I didn't even know parasites were a thing. And you know, it's a trend now. Like you've known about parasites for a long time.
Yeah.
I have for like maybe a year and a half, because you have helped me get rid of parasites. Now they're back. It's a whole other discussion, but
I don't think they disappear.
See, we're going to get into this. Okay, we're going to get into this because right now, I want to talk about it because it's popular on TikTok. Like there's like some like Walmart supplement or something you can get, like, oh, get rid of your parasites. And I'm like, it's more complicated than just that, I think.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it. Tell me, how would somebody listening to this podcast or watching this podcast on YouTube know if they have a parasite or not?
Oh.
Or
it's like opening it up with like a tough.
Well, isn't there like a really crazy high statistic of how many people?
I would say that if you are, I think there's a couple doctors out there, who are quoted as, if you're breathing, then you have parasites. I mean, I think it is pretty much that common. I would say like in my field of either working with people clinically and or muscle testing, like frequency testing, as well as like blood work, like it shows up 99% of the time. So, I mean, you could go through all the signs and symptoms of like, what does it mean, to
give us like
have a parasite?
The top 5 or the
top. So, I mean, I would say food allergies. A lot of times food allergies can be parasitic.
I'm sorry, my dog is drinking water in the background. Can we just wait until he finishes drinking? Let me just make sure that everything's good. Yeah, you, Nashville. Jeez. Okay, give me a test 1, 2.
Test 1, 2.
Oh, yours is so quiet. Okay.
Do you want me to be louder? I just need to be really...
I think I should turn mine down, but we're already rolling and I don't want to edit it midway, so I'll just boost you more and then lower me.
Cool. Should I talk louder? Does that help?
No, I'm too loud.
Okay.
I should shut up. Okay, so will you give me the top 5, however many you can? Okay, of symptoms.
Okay. So I would say chronic illness that you can't get rid of, no matter how hard you try. Because I would say that for a lot of people, including myself, like work through a lot of layers of chronic illness. But parasites is a pretty foundational first step. So without getting rid of those, so I say like having a chronic viral infection, chronic bacterial infection, I mean, you name it, if it's chronic and we can't ever get over it, there is a large chance that it's probably because you never address parasites. I would say for kids, what I see, and this is kind of funny, but like picking their nose, like not being like picking their nose or itching their rear end.
Your butthole. That's what she's talking about. She doesn't want to say butthole, but I totally will. If your butthole itches, you got parasites.
Constipation, eye floaters, like having, if you ever had an eye floater where like, it's like almost like you see like a bug that's like constantly like moving back and forth across your vision. And you like close your eyes. Sometimes even when your like eyes are closed and there's like sunlight coming in or like bright light, like you'll see like a little like black floater thing that kind of looks like a little bug that you just can't get rid of. Not always, but those can be parasites. Fingernail biting, like again, it can be a nervous habit.
That's interesting. I didn't know that one.
Or it could be parasites. There's a lot of like mental, emotional, like I would say kind of brain type symptoms that can be parasites.
Okay. So I think the whole purpose of, for one thing, this, no, I like it. No, it's great. I think the purpose of, I'm talking, like this is a podcast. Okay. Yeah. That like, I don't know much. Emily knows a lot. And so like, I'm going to like ask the questions that everybody, like all the layman people like me want to ask. So
because I love
can parasites...
Bleh. And she's like, between her and my husband, they're like,
well, because she does like she does the NTP speak, which like, you know, knowledge is fantastic, but sometimes there's like the curse of knowledge where like,
right. And I think when you're around it so much, like speaking to people from a clinical perspective as well as
sorry,
the thunder and the dog drinking, we're good.
Yeah, this is a mess, but it'll be great.
And then you're around people like that are in that world, like social media and different things, you know, in terms of like, that's just always the conversation. So sometimes like she's so gracious and she'll be like, oh, you're the expert. And I'm like, no, because I can think of 10 other people who I know this way better than me. So
okay,
you're breaking it down to where you feel.
Because I remember that when the first time you brought up parasites and I was like, what? And I was like, where would I get a parasite? And she was like, tap water, your food, sushi, animals. And I was like, yeah, which now I don't eat pork anymore. Like I can't eat pork. I look at it and I'm like, I love
bacon is still the one thing that my family struggles to let go of, for sure.
But like now it's not worth it to me because I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
But so anyways, so Emily put me on a parasite protocol. I'm back on a different type of parasite protocol. But so can parasites, like if you can see them in your eye, does that mean they break like the blood-brain barrier?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can have parasites in your brain.
So then why? Because someone has asked me this, like, so if and I know they exist because I've seen them come out my butt. Like they've been in the toilet. They have. But like, if they're there, like, why don't they see them on colonoscopies? Why don't they see them like on CT scans, like of the brain? Like,
sure.
Can you like paint that picture for me? Because I don't know the answer
sure
to
that
it.
I have probably the best answer.
Okay.
There's probably an even better.
Is it
answer
biofilms?
Out there. So I would say biofilms would be my kind of clinical assessment, as well as, and again, this is kind of where maybe I'm not as expertise as you think I am, but I am not actually sure how far up they go in colonoscopies.
Oh.
And so it's something that's like on my brain of like, oh, we probably need to like kind of figure that out a little bit more in terms of like, do they just maybe go just like a short way? How high up into the colon do they get?
So I've wondered that too, because I think they take like a percentage of the colon, like okay, you have so much feet of colon, we'll go this much far from the top.
Exactly.
And then that'll give us a rough estimate of what's in there, like percentage wise, and then we'll go enough from the bottom. Yeah. Like, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly either. So that is a thought. I think biofilms, I think parasites hide in more places. I mean, there's a lot of parasites, and from my understanding, there's only a couple that are really going to live, or like there are more parasites that are going to live outside of just the intestines. And they don't all live in the intestines. So I think from a medical perspective, we're looking only for parasites that are in the colon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Versus like parasites that are in the brain or the liver or other things that are still there. And then I think you have the biofilms that are hiding them.
Will you explain what a biofilm is?
Sure. So I like to think of biofilms as like a weird, like sticky, almost like a spider web, you know, where it's kind of like our body's way of, I don't know if protection is the right word under some contexts, it can be, but things like mold and viruses and other things come in, and as they're kind of disrupting the body starts to create biofilms, and it kind of is like a protective house so that it's not constantly circulating within the body. It's a sticky substance that kind of sticks it, hides it away. And the problem is then the immune system can't go and clear it out, even if the immune system is truly strong enough to do it, because it's kind of hidden behind this protective wall. And the problem with that protective wall is it kind of becomes a petri dish, you know, where things grow really, really well. So it's kind of this incubator of like, we're protected, you know, we're maybe not, the immune system's not coming in. So
it's like a preservation thing. It's like a like the body's like, I'm protecting myself because I don't know how to process this thing.
Yeah.
Because I
kind of think of it as like, we have toxins pathogens that are coming into the body. And then an ideal world is our immune system kind of like, if we have like a tower here and a tower here, then that immune system is strong enough, and the body is kind of functioning on all cylinders to be able to go in and grab that pathogen, that toxin, and pull it out through drainage pathways. And that can be through our sweat. That can be for females. A lot of times it's our monthly cycle. That is kind of a drainage pathway. So we're getting rid of things that don't belong there. Our colon, our liver, our lymphatic system, these are all kind of drainage pathways, kidneys. So if those are not all functioning optimally, then the immune system can't. So you have the immune system, you have the drainage pathways, you have energy, you have mitochondria, like all of these things work together to come into the body and say, you don't belong here, you need to get out. It's kind of
so like if the liver's not functioning, then you can't really address it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying I think it's more challenging.
Yeah,
for sure, to have that optimal health. So again, I think our bodies were designed to filter out toxins, things like Lyme disease, mold. I mean, mold was actually in Leviticus in the Bible. Like it talks about mold. And so mold has been around forever. Toxins have been around forever. Parasites have been around forever. It's just why all of a sudden is it overtaking our immune systems and are kind of taking over the hosts, if you will. We're like, oh, we think it's just third world countries that have this problem. It's not Americans, it's not because we're clean. It's kind of like lice. Like it doesn't make sense. Like, it's not, it doesn't have to be a dirty only environment to which it can live in. It just has to not function well and kick it out,
We as a society are super unhealthy. And I never knew that, like, you say drainage pathways. I know what it means now because you and I are friends and we've talked about this but it's like your liver and your gallbladder. And if your liver and your gallbladder aren't functioning properly, basically nothing is going to function properly, correct? To the most part. So
it's a major organ. So sorry, go ahead.
No, but like a lot of things can forgive me if I'm simplifying this too much. Like say you're prescribed like an antibiotic or a medication or something that your body doesn't know what to do with it. It can store it behind a biofilm, like anywhere, right? In your liver or in like your...
I think in theory.
In theory. Yeah. So if you think about like generationally, like we've just gotten more and more medicated. So like our livers and I think we're just the most unhealthiest we've ever been, but people think they're healthy because they're getting their pills from Walmart.
Right. Well, I think we just live in toxic soup.
Yeah.
Whether it is man-made EMFs, which is a whole other conversation, but like,
ooh, that's a podcast.
Yeah. You lose so much, like, it's separating, kind of the frequency from the harmony, which God intended. So when you take the harmony out of electromagnetic fields, which are natural, and you create it like 5G or other things, that are kind of that are man-made frequencies, like it is damaging to ourselves. So you have that, you have toxins everywhere. I mean, whether it's your toothpaste or your air fresheners, I mean, you name it, brand new furniture, brand new rugs, like it's everywhere. It's sprayed in everything. It's sprayed on our clothes,
on our food.
Yeah, on our food. So you have just that. Then you add in our water. Like most people again think, oh, it's been filtered through, the city or whatever. But like again, like there's parasites, there's viruses, there's things just in the air. Like we're spraying things everywhere. And then you have the whole idea of like radioactive elements, even that's like when bombs go off, like they've been able to like track like nuclear bombs, like they can track that funnel that like goes up into the air, and then you have all these radioactive elements that also like travel across the globe. Like we share all of the same air, really, and it's not like the toxins in China stay in China. Like they go up in the air every time you have jets and all these things. Like we just are in such a toxic soup environment. And again, just a side note, I really, really feel very, very strongly that knowledge should be empowering. So when we learn these things, it's never ever to create fear. Because again, I think that, I don't know, and Lee and I've talked about this where it's kind of like, I would honestly rather you just keep eating at McDonald's and like just live in beautiful bliss ignorance than like have awareness that you're supposed to be doing something and being in such fear that you actually never take a step forward.
Yeah.
Like you were in such just fear over, oh my word, I have parasites. Oh my word, our food is lack of so many nutrients. Oh my goodness. And then you just almost get paralyzed in this sense of fear, and everything becomes a toxin to the point where, again, we're mind, body, and soul. Mindset is huge. Mindset is going to affect us if we're living in fear and we freak out every time our kid eats something that we think is, or we just can't even make the first step to do anything positive because we're so afraid. Yeah. And in that case,
because then you'll never know everything. Because like a lot of people, like a friend of mine I was talking to, like once, I don't know what to do first because everybody says something is the most important. Some people say water is like, you need to increase your water. And it's just it's like a lifestyle change of slowly changing things to be a little less toxic, like cleaning products and makeup. But it's a slow, you have to give yourself some grace to be like, okay, to change everything all at once and to get rid of things already paid for is really expensive. So you just got to slowly pivot things over. I'm still doing it. I've been on this thing for like a year, I'd say.
And then I think, you, again, having that mindset of just like always taking another step forward. Yeah. Always having that like.
And grace.
Yeah. Yeah. And finding like what resonates with you too, like right now, I think Parasites is this crazy fad because all of a sudden people, I don't know if fad is the right word, but
it's a fad. It's all over TikTok and people are so dumb.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that like my kind of journey with Parasites was almost 4 years ago of just learning about like, holy cow, like this is a thing, and understanding that, parasites have their own digestive tract. Like they have their own system that is literally pooping out toxins
into you
that they feed on, that make them thrive even more. And that makes us achy and that makes us hurt. I think inflammation, kind of just jumping around here, but like there's so many root causes. And I think people believe like inflammation, like, oh, it's a root cause, like because I hurt. But like, do you actually hurt? Like, why is the inflammation there? Because there's probably just so much toxin buildup that, the inflammation is trying to put out the fire. Like it's not inflammation, I've heard an awesome analogy, and this could be applied to several different situations within this conversation. But like, if you were driving, across the street and you see a fire, and then there's firemen putting out the fire, and then a week later you see another fire over in this house, and there's firemen putting out the fire, and then you keep seeing that happening, do you then assume that the firemen are the ones starting the fire, or are they actually the ones putting it out? But every time you see a fire, there's firemen present. So does that mean they're the ones? So I think like inflammation is a great example of like, is it actually the fire starter, or is it trying to put out the fire? Is it the cause, or is it more of, it's there for a reason, and so we have to understand why is it there. So again, I see parasites being such a foundational thing, and again, kind of that intentionally disruptive idea. I think sometimes we are drawn to disruptive ideas when you have been on a journey where you can't get better and you can't. And the other thing I find is that people really struggle asking for help in this world. I think between Pinterest and TikTok and podcasts and all these things that are like, it's hard to know where to start. And so if you can do something on your own, like how many people are like, well, I healed my gut, I had leaky gut. Well, how did you know you had leaky gut? Did you get a test done? Did have someone tell you clinically? Like, well, no, I just have all the signs and symptoms based on something I found on Facebook. And again, that's not a bad thing if you feel better and it empowered you to do something. But again, having that knowledge. And so the idea of parasites being, they are not a great thing to have in your body. While at the same time, I do think that there is a way to do it. And I've seen it done really wrong, unfortunately, which then people are like, oh, I either don't have them because I did this and this was my experience, or I tried that. I felt terrible. So
yeah, but from my experience, like sometimes you feel worse before you get better. So like one of the best things I ever did, and I mean this, was to like get off of Pinterest and stop. Like I would go on a tangent and be like, oh, it's my mitochondria. And then I'd just buy like one thing and I'd feel kind of a little bit better. And then it would just go right back. And then I'd I'd go towards, like, oh, it's my hormones. So I'll do these 2 things that Pinterest told me was good for hormones. And then it either wouldn't do anything or like Band-Aid it. But the best thing I ever did was to hire Emily and to say, like, I don't have the brain capacity to learn what I need to learn to take care of myself. Like, I can't do this. But traditional doctors failed me. I can say that with confidence that, like, I went in with my symptoms, like, I don't know, everything seems fine. Maybe you should be on birth control because, you know, you're sexually active. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm married. I'm like, well, if you don't want kids, you should be on birth control. And I'm like, I have it under control. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I don't feel good. I'm exhausted all the time. At the time I was 27. It's like, I shouldn't be exhausted all the time. I shouldn't like bloat every time I eat anything. I shouldn't wake up in the middle of the night in like a torrential sweat in a panic, like things that shouldn't happen, which I should look back on my symptoms so that I can know. But like,
I'll say bloating, you know, can totally be parasites. You know? Are you actually feeding your body or are you feeding the creatures that live inside?
Oh, have you ever watched Stargate? This is totally like a tangent.
No, I know what it is, but I don't think I've actually ever watched it.
So I'm a fan of Stargate, and there's like a thing called a Goa'uld, and it's like it's basically looks like a parasite that lives inside of you. And I relate to that show a lot more now because I do. But
like, oh my word, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the parasites that have come out are like they're no joke. So we have I guess she's your client, but she's my friend. That she loves you, so I'm sure she would call you friend too. But she was like, she's working with you. Yeah. And she was like, I just feel terrible today. And I'm like, I bet you're going to pass a parasite tomorrow. And it never fails. Cause like I had to learn that like, on days I feel like utter trash and like borderline depressed. Like it's like weird things that parasites like.
Cause they mess with your neurotransmitters. So they're going to jack that up.
I've learned that like, I know when I'm about to pass a parasite the next day is because I feel like trash the day before. I have like bad thoughts and I'm depressed and I just want to go to bed and not think anything. And then the next day I'll pass a parasite and I'm like, you little jerk, I won. I won this one. But like a lot of people just like live in this state of like, oh, this is just my life.
Well, and I think you and I have had this conversation. Like I am, I'm blown away, but like having this conversation with people and being like, oh, like this could be a root cause. Like, you know, again, I always like to say that, you know, in my way of thinking, I will treat foundations first and function second. People often come with functional problems, like my thyroid's not working, my hormones are off, I can't get pregnant, you know, my child has A, B, C, or D. And I'm like, okay, but let's address foundational first. Let's, you know, and we could talk about that on another thing. But I'm amazed at how many times like just that foundational piece of clearing out parasites is so huge. But it's always amazing to me how there are people that they don't want you to talk about it because it's super grosses them out. Yeah. And they're never going to look in the toilet to see if
that's my husband
out because it freaks them out. Yeah. And then there's legit like, I would rather feed them than have them come
That is also my husband. That is
like it's fine they can stay there. We're just gonna let those little suckers do their thing.
That makes me think that's what they do with their emotions too. Because I'm like, you have to deal with things. Yeah. Because like, I mean.
Yeah. And again, you know, I am a huge warrior just always comes back to me, right? And it does. It takes like a kind of a warrior mentality, I think, sometimes to be intentionally disruptive.
Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to advocate for your health as much as you can. I know a lot of people like to lean back on like, oh, my doctor told me to do this. And like, yes, you should listen to your doctor to a certain extent, but they're not there with you day to day feeling what you're feeling. And like, you have to advocate for yourself and take charge and go see a practitioner or go find somebody who listens to you. Because that's the problem these days, isn't it? A lot of, maybe even some like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Oh, most doctors. I lost my train of thought. I don't remember.
Yeah. And just to throw this in there, and again, this could be a whole other podcast. So like to not like rabbit trail too much, but again, there's balance there, right? Like we have to know when to advocate. But I think once you find that practitioner that you really resonate with, that you feel offers you, because again, going back to kind of that, our last podcast of like, what do you want? And then how are you going to get it? And so I think that understanding, what do I want? Finding someone who offers you something that resonates
and
with
listens.
You. Yes. And then I think you stick with it, right? Like if every time you felt cruddy, even if you knew you were going to pass the parasite, like if you didn't trust me, then that process never would have worked, you know? And so there are people that I talk with that I'm like, if I can right off the bat, if I don't feel like we're a good fit, then you need to find someone else, because I don't care that I could offer you something. And I do think I could help you. But if you can't stick with me regardless of how we feel, then maybe this isn't the right fit, right? Like there is also, again, that mindset of like, advocate for yourself, find that person who you do feel confident in and that resonates with you, and that you feel like, oh no, they can take me where I want to go in terms of achieving goals. And then you got to stick with the process. Yeah. You know,
because it is a process. It's not, you've told me since the beginning, like it's not linear. Like is that the right term? Yeah. It's not going to
healing's not linear.
Healing isn't linear. And like, sometimes you might feel worse before you get better. And that is 1000% true, because like there were days where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And you're like, just hold off on the protocol for just a little bit, depending on the situation. Yeah. And then we'd pick right back up. But because it depends also, like, let's talk about like, is there like actionable steps that people can do to like rid their environment of parasites first? Yeah.
So I would say
even just like 2 or 3.
Yeah. I'll say most people aren't ready for parasite cleansing. So I would say for most people, you need to seal the gut first, and you need to open drainage pathways. And for some people, not everyone, but some people need to build that mitochondria, because it does take energy to detox kind of thing. So I would say kind of a one step would be like, don't just jump into parasites, even though it sounds really cool and it's kind of the best thing to do. Yeah. Like I've seen damage long-term. And again, parasites is like, it's not going to go away. In the sense of like, we're still constantly exposed to it unless you're like hiding in a bubble. And even then, I mean, there's things that we can do to take actionable steps to make sure. So for a good one that I see people not do, that's a big source of parasites, reintroducing them to the body, is not washing our fruits and vegetables, whether they're in our garden or whether we're getting them from a farmer's market or whether we're getting them from the store. Like soaking them and washing them. I mean, white vinegar and water is the cheapest, easiest way. And then there's steps up from there that you can do. But like that is a source where people, I find often like we just kind of forget to wash our fruits and vegetables. So, you know, that's a step. Often people kiss their animals and then let their animals on furniture, and in
that's us. We do have our dogs on furniture.
In beds. Like,
we have taken them out of our bed though.
Yeah, because my daughter still sneaks our dog up to her bed. But animals often have parasites, and so when you're in their faces and you're letting them in your bed, I mean, then that is an exposure. So I think I would say like actionable steps to maybe just prevent things like raw sushi and pork are some of the highest things. And then things like, eating, and again, everything in balance, but things like pumpkin seeds, king coffee, things like that are kind of coming in and supporting the body. I've seen beet juice, but again, in balance. Like I've seen people go absolutely crazy eating tons and tons of pumpkin seeds, and they have a totally messed up gut, and maybe seeds and nuts are not what they should be eating just yet, and it causes other issues. So being aware of what exposure we're bringing and like trying to trim that down, doing supportive things like king coffee. I love king coffee, kind of for helping just support the body and doing what's naturally supposed to do, which sometimes kicks out parasites. And then honestly, working with someone to make sure that you do have all your drainage pathways open before you actually go after parasites.
I think there's like a confidence that comes with like having a practitioner, hiring a practitioner to say like, hey, these are my things. You have the knowledge. Just tell me what to do, and like kind of just like trust. Like I trust Emily. Like she's my friend, but like I also trust her with like I've sent so many people. I feel like I don't know. Maybe they don't all come, but like I know like okay, whoever I send to her or like I recommend, I'm like she's gonna like bottom line care that she's doing the things in the proper order, not just meeting the things that are trendy. Like.
Right.
Not just the things that are the fad of she's going to be like, nope, this is just the, like, we're going to go through this protocol. If it doesn't work for you, like if my not prescription, but if my like protocol doesn't work for you, then maybe, recommendations. If that doesn't work for you, then maybe this isn't a good fit. She'll like,
yeah.
In a way, that's like you advocating for them because like otherwise it doesn't suit either of you if someone's pushing back the whole time and it's like, well, then why did you hire me if you're going to question everything? But what I'm trying to think of it. We did a couple ways for you to clean up your environment. Now I'm getting sleepy. What is it? What's another? I had a question. This will be cut out. Address drainage. What would you tell a client? Like, what's another topic? Like, we've done your environment, set up your drainage first. What would be another topic to hit before we close?
In regards to parasites, you're saying?
Do we want to talk full moon?
Oh, yeah. We could. Yeah, I feel like it's trendy again, so it's one of those.
It is?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I'll just do a full moon challenge.
Oh, is it?
Like, oh.
But is that because that's who you follow?
Yeah, I mean, I've had like 2 people recently be like, hey, should I do this? And I'm like, you've never touched parasites before or drainage. Like, don't jump into this just because you saw it on social media. So, I don't know.
So then maybe we just talk about how like can't just jump into a full moon challenge.
Sure. We could just talk about how things get worse around the full moon. That's a good, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. One thing I think that when we're on a health journey, a lot of people do really, really well at like tracking their food and tracking their cycles. And I'll have people come in and they'll be like, oh my goodness, like my headaches, like there's no rhyme or reason. My gut issues, there's no rhyme or reason. Like my health just gets where I'm like on the couch, can't do anything. I feel miserable. And it doesn't have anything to do with the food I'm eating. And it often doesn't have anything to do with where I land in my cycle, especially for females. So there's just no rhyme or reason. And one question I will often ask is, did you track it around a full moon? Because during full moons, we don't have as much melatonin, is my understanding of why this, makes sense, is that we don't have as much melatonin. And then the kind of critters, in our bodies get more active. That being said, parasites is one of them, so I think it's kind of hilarious because, there's that idea that hospitals, and my dad worked at, a rescue mission, that people just go crazy during full moon.
It is true.
And so understanding that about parasites and how they get more active during a full moon. So it's kind of a great way to go after parasites during a full moon because they're more active. So when we kill them and bind them and pull them out, often you see a little bit more increased activity during a full moon. So one thing too that you could track that would be helpful to a practitioner or just to yourself is like, do any of your health weird symptoms, are they tracking around full moon? But that being said, I've, had a lot of people be like, oh, should I just jump into this full moon challenge? And for some people, it's been fine, but I would say more than not, I end up having people come see me or ask questions or like bring this up to me of like, basically like doing very like, not necessarily protocol specifics. They're just kind of, doing kind of picking and choosing based on what they've seen and adrenal fatigue and different things of like, oh, I've tried this, I've tried this, I eat healthy and all this stuff. And then they turn around and they're like, well, we're gonna do a full moon challenge. So they'll take all these supplements during a full moon, which can be helpful. But what I have seen clinically.
Take the easy way out too. It's like one time isn't going to cure you.
Right. So one thing I've seen clinically is like doing, kind of sealing the gut, working through that drainage, and then going into parasite cleansing, which is on a monthly basis, where you're kind of killing them, pulling them out, and then also making sure that your body can handle that. Like, parasites, again, I'm talking the liver, like there's a couple parasite supplements that are really good at killing liver flukes. And I've had people go on that, and within a week, like they're miserable and they're in pain and they're hurting. And they'll come to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, okay, well, it's liver. We got to open up that drainage again. We then need to try a different tactic or different things like that. So when we go into like never doing parasite cleansing, and then also jumping into 3 products that are brand new to the body during a full moon. And I even had one lady who had done it like during her cycle and a full moon and introduced like brand new products that she had never introduced before. And so she felt miserable, and she's like, well, that parasite stuff doesn't work. It made me feel awful. It's like, well, because you don't even know how your body would respond to it. So I think it's important.
It's like diving in the deep end without like putting on a suit. Like,
And so I think that like, while I do think it is important, it is also important for certain people at certain times in a protocol to introduce some parasite things to lessen the load, to make sure we're binding properly. And again, even binders, I've seen people bring in binders, and the binder by themselves can be enough to really detox and push somebody kind of over that threshold. So introducing 3-4 products that are brand new during a full moon, when you've never done any real work in terms of parasites before, is not something I necessarily resonates with me, and not necessarily something that I feel truly helps somebody in the long run. Working on certain drainage pathways, understanding that, because again, I think educating people so that you understand like, oh, my shoulder hurts, my left shoulder hurts. Could that be my liver? That's not actually like, oh, my shoulder's in pain. Yeah, it's probably your liver, based on what we know you're currently on in terms of products and that stuff. And then what we're working on. So let's go in, let's open that drainage pathway. The shoulder pain is gone. Now we reintroduce that parasite supplement, keep working on cleaning out the liver. You do certain things like that for a couple months, and then you go into a full moon challenge, because we're constantly reintroduced to parasites. And Leah and I are big advocates on camping and being outside and swimming in lakes and all that stuff, which are more areas where we're introduced to more parasites. So for most of us, doing a 1 to 2 times a year parasite cleanse during a full moon can be super, super helpful at maintaining health in the long run. And really, when you look at ancient literature, so I love history. And when you look through some of these old cultures, they didn't call it parasite cleansing, but essentially based on the herbs they were eating and kind of, the fasting and the different things. And often it was around a full moon, and it was like, oh, they were killing parasites, during this season.
There's a lot of cultures, like I've heard, again, I've a lot of cultures that still like deworm their kit. Like they do it. Sure. They do, even if it's through herbs or holistic manner. Like my friend is like, she lives on a Apache reserve, and she's like, yeah, we do that. Like we do like she called it something different, but like, she's like, yeah, we basically like deworm our tribe like once a year. And I'm like, what? Why don't we as Americans, why isn't this more common knowledge?
Right. And I think some of it is, like even like biblical times, like, you would have women would go into like a 3-month cleansing period or whatever that time period would be before they got married. Like we are just also a society that we don't have rhythms. We don't live systematically. Like we live in a sick, like our medical system is a sick system. We wait till we're sick to do something about it. There's no intentionality. There is no like, we also
it's not preventative medicine. It's like, it's Band-Aid medicine, right?
Right. And even within medicine, I don't even like the word functional medicine really, because I don't like because it's like, it should just be part of who we are.
Yeah.
And that should just be part of our culture. I also don't think that we honor past generations very well. I don't think like if grandma came and said you should do this, like a lot of us are like, what does grandma know? And so I think sometimes like we've lost that sense of like looking back and what did they do to be healthy. And yes, we live in more toxicity than grandma and grandpa did and all that kind of stuff, especially like great grandma and grandpa. But I think we can learn a lot by just being more systematic and doing liver cleanses and parasite cleanses and just keeping our bodies at optimal function and not waiting for our health to fail to look to medicine, no matter what medicine that is. Does that kind of make sense? Like, I feel like there's this call to step up and teach our kids, don't wait till you're sick to do a parasite cleanse. Like, we're all just going to do it a couple times a year.
Isn't it also like being intuitive and like knowing your body? I feel like we don't know our bodies anymore. It's just like, oh, this is just genetics. This is just, my dad had bad knees. I'll have bad knees. My grandpa had bad, like, people just think, we just put the label of it's genetics on there so quickly that people say that and then they never go and get like, say, hey, like, is there, like, do we have bad knees because of the inflammation that is caused by the parasites? Or is it actually genetics? Like, we don't question it anymore. Like, it's just.
Or it's a diagnosis. Well, it's true. I'm tired because I have this condition, or diagnosis, because very few people use the word condition. And so that's just what it is. Like, I have Hashimoto's. Of course I'm tired. Like, of course I have a hard time losing weight. That's just what I have. Well, my mom had this. My dad had this. You know, for sure.
Well, because don't you think it's just easier to just, like, come to terms like, oh, this is just life. This is just my diagnosis. Like, my family dealt with it, so this is just going to be my life. To me, that's kind of like taking the easy way out. It's a hard path, but, like, instead of just, again, like we said with the previous episode with, like, just having like a 10-minute hard conversation will save you a lifetime. It's like just spending like, 6 months to a year, just like doing some lifestyle changes can change the rest of your life and your well-being and your happiness and your energy levels. If people would just put down the diagnosis.
Right. And the excuse for sure. Yeah. And I think we're busy. We're too busy. We literally wait, like, the body's resilient until it's not. And I think in our brains, we just keep going and going and going until we just can't get off the couch anymore. And then we find an answer. And so sometimes it's like, I don't have time or money to do this. And like, but again, you walk into the ER and you need, a life-saving surgery that's $50,000. 50,000. Yeah.
50,000.
I was like, that's enough.
Yeah. That's a number.
It's a big number. Nobody questions it.
Yeah.
You do it.
That's true.
Like, it's going to save your life. But whether it is slowing our pace, whether it's going to sleep at normal times, whether it is parasite cleansing, whether it is like it's just be like, oh, it's not a big deal. I can chalk it up. Mom and dad survived. I'll be fine. It's genetics. It's whatever. But we push through because I think so much of it is. Okay, so there's a C.S. Lewis quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but where he talks about, how we are like children in the slums playing with mud pies because we don't know that a vacation at the sea is possible or something along those lines. And then it's kind of like we're a generation that's far too easily entertained or amused
and distracted.
And so I think that so often it is not even the lazy way out or the easy way. It's like, we just don't even know it's possible. Like, no one has like shown us Narnia. Like, we just don't even know it's there.
I agree. Cause I didn't know like a year and a half ago that like I could consistently feel better. Like, I didn't know. Cause I worked myself to the point where like I couldn't not take naps every day. And I was just like, I hit a point where I was like, I guess this is just my life now. I'll just be the girl who takes naps like all the time. But it's like when you first hear about Jesus, you want to tell everybody about it. Of course, hopefully that lasts for longer than just the beginning. But like I want people to know that like you don't have to feel like trash for the rest of your life. Like mind, body, and soul. And also find a practitioner who like, it's expensive, yes, but if you find a good practitioner, you say, hey, this is my budget for the month. Even if it takes a year to do it, 2 years to do it, most likely they'll work with you and they'll slowly do the protocol, because like it doesn't always have to be this, you know, huge investment. It can be a slow thing to do really it's investing in your health, because like that's what I absolutely loathe about the health insurance world, because why are we paying so much monthly for hypothetical situations, and only medical doctors, even though like I'm doing preventative medicine. I mean, I guess, is that the right term? Preventative medicine with you, and also like healing things that like they didn't even catch.
Sure. Yeah.
And yet none of it's covered by insurance, but I'm I'm more healthy than the person that they're giving full coverage to, if that makes sense. Because I hate health insurance, but I never use it. I pay so much for it because I have to, but I never use it. I have to use my own money to actually get true health. Yeah. Yeah. The system is broken.
Right. But I think Emily Morrow always says like everything is figure outable. Like when I first heard her say that, I was like 100% agree. Yeah. Like, and I think that is, an excuse I strip away from a lot of people, because I'm like, I know, like we don't live on a huge income, and I have little kids that have had some major health issues that we've had to spend a lot of money working through, a lot of their developmental stuff and a lot of the emotional stuff and a lot of the brain stuff that's like, holy cow, like your brain is on fire. We've got to fix this. And I have a husband that works third shift. Like there's a lot of prevention that goes into just trying to get him to function, because of his shift, and just trying to keep him healthy, because it's hard to stay healthy when you're on third shift. Like it just, it is. But everything is figure outable. Like it doesn't matter where you're coming from. There's always a way to figure out how to get what you want. Yeah. It just might think we live in a world that we just want like some magic pill that will cure all things. And it's never going to happen. It's not, you're not going to find it. I feel like it's lifestyle change, finding a good practitioner to work with, and also giving yourself grace to slowly do stuff, because I feel like a lot of people... It doesn't have to be perfect. We see things on Pinterest or social media and we're like, oh my goodness, like they have all these modalities at home and they have all these supplements and they have all these things. Well, somebody must have given them money for all that, or somebody, like, you know what? Like a lot of times my Christmas present and birthday present is money towards other health things that I want. Like it is like, hey, I really, really want this red light, so... don't buy me a Christmas present and I will buy this instead. But how many, I don't know, I feel like sometimes like in the holistic world I see that a lot, but most of my friends who aren't in this world are not asking for a sauna for their family Christmas gift. I mean, they don't. And then they say, well, I don't know how to afford it. Which sauna are you buying? Are you wanting to buy? Therasage. Yeah. The infrared sauna? How much does it run? I haven't looked at it. It's like, I want to say 1,200. It's a lot for a sauna. Yeah. But again, like, oh, hey, can we just save up money and do, do this? Like everything, you can figure out everything, Again, that's for your drainage though. So like the sauna would be to help detoxify, right? Just for people listening. Cause I thought saunas were just to make you sweat. I knew that sweat like helped you get rid of toxins, but like saunas used to make me super nauseous. Because you weren't sweating. Because I wasn't sweating. Yeah. Now I sweat. I never used to sweat. Yeah. That's another like great tool when used properly at the right time. Yeah. That's crazy. Any final thoughts you'd like to say to people listening, if they're considering doing like an unsupervised? I don't think I could have ever done I wouldn't have wanted to deal with it. Cause also like being able to text Emily and being like, this is the thing that's in the toilet. Here's a picture. That's when you know your friends and you send poo pictures and I think like, I mean, people say like, oh, I had a lady today. She like was like, ooh, I had this, procedure kind of thing, and it's kind of personal. And I was like, girl, I was like, I have like I could just show you a whole reel of like poop pictures, like it's okay. We get pretty real in here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
There's nothing too personal that I'm ever shocked by anymore.
Yeah. And it's crazy how like I used to think, I didn't think parasites were a thing. And then suddenly I'm texting pictures. I'm like, look at this big one we got rid of. That's awesome. I'm like, oh.
Which is also great because my husband won't look at them. And
I won't either. I force him.
And a lot of times I'm like, let's see, who wants to see my picture today?
Me.
Like, you're never going to believe this. Especially when like you hit a point too. Because again, like, you know, I believe parasites should not, just kind of as a closing thought too, I don't think it should create fear because I believe we're going to live with them. I think they have a purpose. Like parasites are really good at coming in and eating viruses and bacteria, and they're good at eating lime and heavy metals. So my question is always like, I don't think that they're there for no reason. Like I think that we have them in an ideal world. In the way my brain works is they would come in, they eat the stuff that's not supposed to be there. The immune system is strong enough to come in and push them out. And out with them also comes some toxins that shouldn't be there.
Just a thought, again, closing, but if someone were to do because like I'm thinking about, like I see all these TikToks that are like people buying this supplement on like at Walmart.
Sure.
And they're doing it themselves. And I'm like, okay, if parasites eat lime and toxins in the body and you don't pull them out properly and your drainage isn't open, potentially like those things throw up, right? And they poop. So like,
sure,
couldn't they release lime back into your system if you don't kill them properly or don't grab the things that's happening and get them out quickly, like, and give them a place to go, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And so I think that's again where there's like when I work with people, including myself and my kids and, you know, the other people I work with, especially with kids, just because, again, this whole other conversation, but like kids are always communicating with us. It just doesn't always look the same. And so doing like a parasite cleanse with a child, and then all of a sudden they have a weird behavior things, you know, and there's probably a reason they're probably trying to tell you something and communicate something. But a lot of times we don't even associate it with that, or like, oh, they just don't detox well. But I agree, like in most protocols, like I don't touch a lot of that stuff, mold and heavy metals, and I'm not going to touch it until we've kicked out all the parasites. And again, I think we live systematically with them. I don't think that they're ever just totally gone, and that, don't think it should ever create fear that like we can't go swim in a lake and we can never, you know, touch sushi again, and we can never, ever, ever like walk barefoot. Like I want to ground, but if I walk barefoot, there's parasites in the ground. And what am I supposed to do with all this information? And I think so much of it is just like, we kick them out, you know, and again, I myself, and then other people I've, you know, I think you've had this experience too, where like just doing supportive measures for our immune system and just drinking something like King coffee and just having some things like minerals that are busting those biofilms all the time. Like I've gotten rid and expelled parasites, and I was never on parasite supplements. Because I have done the work, and then I'm supporting the body with amazing things like reishi mushroom, you know, which is just huge at just supporting the overall body. And then the immune system comes in and does what it's supposed to do. Like the body kicks into gear because it's supposed to kick those guys out, and it will. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're like, holy cow, like I passed this huge parasite and I wasn't expecting it because I wasn't intentionally going after parasites, you know? And so I do think that like there is, and that's again where I see people do parasite cleanses and full moon cleanses on their own, and they end up kind of messed up because they're not properly binding, they're not kicking things out, and then they either feel worse or they never fully, they're like, oh, well, I've done a parasite cleanse. So what'd you do? And, you know, we talk about what they did, or like, oh, my child's done that before. That's not their eczema. Like their eczema is here for something else. And I'm like, well, what did you do? You know? And so we walk through some of those. And a lot of times it's like, well, it either wasn't done long enough, or it wasn't done properly, or there's a lot of other herbs. Like, what does your bio-individuality need right now to make sure that we kick these out? And then we do a different parasite cleanse, and also they're like, holy cow, look at all this stuff coming out. And also, really quickly, a side note is, I don't believe that there are great tests especially stool tests, that ever really show parasites. And people,
why do you think that is?
One, just because I think parasites hide, and I think there's some work that has to be done in order to start kicking them out. I don't know if we just maybe don't have the testing in terms of like looking at stools under like a mass spec, like do they know what we're looking for kind of thing. But I know so many people who've like done stool samples, it comes back, there are no parasites present, and then they'll go on something like the Cellcore products, and all of a sudden they're pooping all these parasites. Like it was there. I just don't think I've ever come across great testing. I mean, blood work can show some pretty awesome things in terms of like maybe what's going on from a infection perspective. If there are parasites, those can be helpful. Signs and symptoms, bioresident scans, muscle testing, those things can pick up parasites much faster than a stool. I wouldn't rely on a stool
because they can hide like in biofilms, right? So like that. That's very common. It's a very intricate conversation. I think we could continue to have, and I think there's so much that's still being learned about just all of it. And that's where, again, like the body is so intricate. What happens from our thoughts and our emotions to our vision, to our dental, to our development, and what does your hair look like? I mean, there's just all these things that all work together. So it can be tough and overwhelming. I think that's where I see a lot of fear creep into people, where it's like, holy cow, like I have all these problems, I can't deal with this. And they just, don't ever end up doing anything, or they do it and they don't feel well, and now they're scared to ever try again. Because they can't, like, it's hard for our own selves to like step back and have that like 30,000 view, like what's really going on with me, from birth or even in utero, like what happened with mom and what was mom's health like, because we are part of mom. So what happened there, what emotions happened there, all the way up until now, what traumas were there, where did we hit our head, what scars do we have? There's just so much there that can be hard to just jump like parasites are the problem. It's not just parasites. It's mind, body, and soul. I mean,
I will say it over and over again, because I used to think talking about people's food was the hardest thing, when I'm like, you can't have gluten, and they're like, oh. And then now I'm like, oh no, it's like we keep circling back to this trauma. Like, this is a problem. Like we have to deal with this. And then everyone's like, no, I'll just not eat gluten. It'd be fine. I don't want to deal with the trauma.
I was talking, we have one of her clients that I know, she was saying that she's like, she told me not to eat gluten or dairy, but I just can't. And I'm like, well, then you must not feel that bad then. And she was like, what do you mean? No, I feel terrible. And I was like, well, if you felt that terrible, you would stop eating the thing that makes you feel terrible. And she's like, yeah, but it's just so good. And I'm like, then I was like,
hit rock bottom.
Then you haven't hit rock bottom. I was like, literally, everybody loves cheese. That's something the whole world can agree on, is that I love bread too. Like, I just want some fluffy, crunchy bread. Like, I just want
bread and butter. It's like the jam.
It's amazing. Jam. Bread, butter, jam. Anyways, no, bad joke. But like, if you feel bad enough, you will do whatever you can to fix it. Did I ever tell you about, I think I intentionally left this out, that like, because I was embarrassed and I just remembered it and I forgot until just now, that like 2.5 years ago, I found on Pinterest a bath or a foot soak that you did to like pull out toxins.
Okay.
Thinking I was going to help myself. Don't do it, kids. Don't do it at home. I took a whole bath instead. I put my whole body in. Maybe I should have told you this. Maybe I forgot and blocked it out. But it was like apple cider vinegar, baking soda, and Epsom salt. And I didn't read the instructions. I did not read them thoroughly. And it was supposed to be just a foot soak at lukewarm temperature for just 5 minutes. And I did a full bath, hot water, for like 25. And like, I did not measure. And I know. That's like why people get sick. But that was the first time I ever saw liver flukes. But like I was literally on the concrete floor. Like Dave carried me out of the office because we worked together at the time. My husband, he carried me out of the office because I couldn't function.
Oh man. Whew. And you weren't sweating at that point, right?
No.
Like there was
No.
Lots of drainage issues there.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It was not. Forgot about it. I probably blocked it out. Ooh.
Yeah. And again, I feel like it is so common, especially in women. Like there's a pride in like,
yeah,
don't sweat.
Oh.
And it's like, oh, I just don't sweat. And I'm like, oh, every time I'm like, that's not good.
No, it's not
now,
good.
obviously excessive sweating is also can be an issue. But
yeah.
In general, if we don't sweat, like that's a problem.
Yeah.
We should sweat.
See, like I would go outside. I couldn't be outside for long periods of time because I would overheat. I'd be like, I'm just not going to go outside and then I wouldn't get vitamin D, and then I wouldn't go in the grass. I wouldn't just be outside hanging out with family and just doing things that bring you joy from being outside, because I would get overheated and I'd go inside and I'd just sit in front of the TV, which is not good for anything. So, okay, I love it. So go see a practitioner. Don't do what I did. I forgot all about it.
That's hilarious.
Until just now. But yeah, great info. You're a pro.
Thanks.
Get rid of your parasites, kids. Call a practitioner. Do you want to close up this one, or do you want me to?
You can close it. I'm
Okay.
drawing a blank if you're good with it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this podcast episode. We're brand new to this, so it would really, really help us as human beings if you would share us human beings with other human beings, if you know what I mean. So just share this podcast with a friend who maybe did a parasite cleanse and it didn't go well, or just,
Start the
conversations about your poop. It's a great conversation. It's really a bonding moment. If you can get somebody who will participate, it is. You'll be poo friends for life, and it's awesome. But
community is huge.
Poo community is huge. We'll see you all in the next episode of Under the Sun. Goodbye. Okay, so I want to do an ad. I know.